Thursday, May 25th, 2017. Director Bryant, could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Banta.
Present.
Commissioner Barrera.
Here.
Commissioner Donaldson is running late, but we are expecting her later in the meeting. Commissioner Kang.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson. Vice Chair Cardoza.
Here.
Chair Keller.
Here.
We have a quorum of 6 commissioners present.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to open the meeting to public comment for anyone wishing to speak to the commission on any item that is not on this evening's agenda. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment, and we have the action recap for April 27th, 2017. Are there any corrections? Approve without exception?
We need a motion and a second.
Oh, I can't just approve that.
Second.
I'll motion it.
Okay. And that is with Commissioner Kang abstaining.
That's correct.
Okay.
Alrighty, if we could have the director's report, please.
Yes. All right. Concerning recent City Council actions, the Council has met twice since your last meeting on May 2nd and May 16th. And of course, they also had a special meeting with you on May 16th. On May 2nd, the Council held a study session on a potential housing development on the east side of San Pablo between 36th and 37th Streets at 3600, 3610, and 3620 San Pablo. This is the same project for which the Commission will be holding a study session tonight, except that the Council study session focused on the various financing mechanisms, while the Commission's consideration will focus on land use and zoning issues. The Council passed the second reading of an ordinance adding lead safety provisions to the building regulations to reinforce existing federal law. The Council authorized a $1.4 million contract for construction of the greenway between Powell and Stanford, so that is finally getting underway. The Council considered the first reading of an ordinance amending the planning regulations regarding accessory dwelling units. As you may recall, the Commission recommended approval of this ordinance at your March 23rd meeting. The Council directed staff to further analyze provisions for lot coverage and to bring back a revised ordinance at a future meeting. The Council approved the first reading of an ordinance amending the development impact fee regulations in the planning regulations to specify that development impact fees applicable to former uses shall be subtracted from fees for new uses, whether or not they were actually paid. The Commission voted to recommend approval of this ordinance at your March 23rd meeting. The Council passed the ordinance on second reading on May 16th, and it will take effect on June 15th. They approved a noise waiver for work on 4 Saturdays in May at the Emery Station West Transit Center project. 2 Saturdays will be for welding work, 1 will be for a concrete pour, and 1 will be for removal of the construction crane. The Council reaffirmed the 2012 pedestrian bicycle plan and adopted a focused update on implementation. This was recommended by the Commission for approval at your March 23rd meeting. It will make the city continue to be eligible for local and state funding for pedestrian and bicycle improvements. And finally, on May 2nd, the Council passed the first reading of an ordinance amending the municipal code provisions for the Planning Commission to specify that any commissioner who is absent from 33% of the regular commission meetings in any calendar year, that is to say 3 meetings, shall automatically be terminated from the commission. This applies to both excused and unexcused absences. This was done for consistency with the recently adopted rules of procedure for other committees, which also specify that any committee member who misses 33% of meetings is automatically terminated. The ordinance was passed on May 16th and will take effect on June 15th. Again, they did have a special meeting with you all in the afternoon on May 16th at ECCL to solicit input from small businesses as to their needs and what services the city was able to provide. Personally, I thought it was a very good meeting, very well attended. There were probably 50 to 60 business people there, and afterwards I heard very positive reviews. They all appreciated the ability to speak freely to the Commission and Council about their concerns, even though it wasn't always kudos to the city, although sometimes it was. And staff will be reporting back to the Council on that meeting at a future Council meeting. Then, at their regular meeting in the evening on May 16th, the council approved an amendment to the ground lease disposition and development agreement and a $4.5 million development loan to EAH for the affordable housing project at 3706 San Pablo Avenue. And they approved a facade improvement grant program, which was to have been considered on April 18th, but it was continued to the May 16th meeting following the joint study session with the Commission on Small Businesses. And of course, on May 16th, they also did the second reading of all those ordinances that I previously mentioned. In other news, I've got 4 other things I want to report on briefly. First of all, Emeryville has been selected, as you may have heard, as a semifinalist in the competition to be designated as a California Cultural District. Part of that application process includes developing an inventory of cultural assets in the city, and the California Arts Council has requested that the city collect as many surveys as possible identifying the city's cultural assets. The survey looks like this. And you should each have a copy of it in front of you, and we have an extra stack right over here.
It's on the website too, right?
Yes, it is. We encourage everyone to fill out this form and return it to Emmy Terrio of the Economic Development and Housing Division no later than next Tuesday. They can be scanned and emailed to Emmy, whose contact information is on the bottom of the second page. They can be returned to the city's front desk, or you can give them to me if you complete them before the end of the meeting. And they can also be filled out online. There is a link from the city website homepage, which is, of course, www.emeryville.org. Next, the Emeryville Greenway has been selected for an award of merit from the American Planning Association, California Chapter Northern Section, and staff will be attending the award dinner next Friday in Oakland to receive that award. We have issued an RFP for urban design and transportation planning services for the 40th and San Pablo bus hub and bus stops along 40th Street. There was a mandatory pre-application meeting on Tuesday morning, day before yesterday. We had about 8 firms there, and we expect to be making a selection in June. And finally, I just want to acknowledge our short-time Public Works Director, Maurice Kaufman. I say short-time because she's a short-timer. As you probably know, his last day with the city will be next Wednesday, May 31st, after 28 years. And I just want to say that it's been my privilege and honor to work with Maurice for 17 of those 28 years. He is a stellar public servant, great engineer, land surveyor, and public works director, and he's just done a tremendous amount of good for this city, and he will be missed greatly. He's a big part of the city brain trust, or brain drain, I should say, that is now leaving. He takes a big chunk of institutional knowledge with him. We have him for one more commission meeting tonight, and he did a lot of the heavy lifting on the Sherwin-Williams subdivision map. So if you have any difficult questions tonight about that, we'll probably be turning to Maurice for the answers. So I just want to say thanks to Maurice for all his service. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of Director Bryant? No? Well, you'll be here for the meeting, Maurice, but I just, before I forget, want to thank you, too, for all your years of service. You're really going to be missed, but you're going on to do great things, I'm sure. Okay, so the next item is disclosure of conflicts and ex parte communications. Are there any? Go ahead, Bud.
At the Wareham popping out ceremony for the transit center, I attended the luncheon afterwards and sat next to Rich Robbins and chatted with him.
Okay. And I have to recuse myself on item C for the new season's grocery store market because of proximity to my home.
I'm sorry I'm late. I was at work working for a company that does work for Lennar, so I have to recuse myself from the first item on the agenda.
You could have been later.
Yeah, I kind of thought you might be. Okay, with that, we will move on to the public hearings, which is item A, the Sherwin-Williams subdivision map. And we have the director, or the staff report, please. Hi, bye.
Good evening, Commission. And before I start my presentation, I would like to second Charlie's remarks regarding Maurice Kaufman. I've worked with him for 12 years, and it has been a pleasure. Planners and engineers are ready to pull each other's hair, but it has been a pleasure to work with Maurice. And we both still have hair, so that's good. But yes, I think I have worked in other jurisdictions, and that has always been a challenge working with engineers. So we have been blessed to have him for so long. Thank you, Maurice. All right, so before I start the presentation, I want to direct your attention to two documents. One is a letter from Park that you received by email, and you would see a hard copy there, and another is a memo. And I will, during my presentation, go point by point on Park's comments. So they will be responded point by point. So
Maru, when you do that point for point, especially for myself and hopefully for us, can you clarify what of those items we are able to discuss and act on, and what items in that letter are either part of the PUD or something that has to go to council? That'd be appreciated. Thanks.
So this graphic must be very familiar to most of you. This is the PUD PDP plan that was approved by the Commission September last year and by the Council on December 1st. So it creates, the project, the PDP plan includes a portion of the city parcel, but the chunk of it, about 8 acres, are Sherwin-Williams property, and we, as you know, it consists of 500 units, about 74,000 square feet of office in the existing building at the bottom here, and some commercial space, 2,000 at the minimum to 8,000 at the maximum. So from moving forward, you have seen FTPs come before you as study session, and what this does, this is the subdivision plan, and it actually creates, this is the permit that will create legal parcels on the site. So it's a subdivision which would reconfigure the Sherwin-Williams site into 5 building parcels, which are identified on the plans as lots 1 to 5, 4 open space parcels identified on the plans as parcels B to E, and creating a new 46th Street and the extension of Hubbard Street, and this is identified as parcel A in the plans. So this is the existing conditions. As you can see, the one in brown is the site. I'm just showing the city parcel site just to recognize that this is part of the PDP, but not part of the subdivision. So currently it's 1 parcel, and that is going to get reconfigured into the following parcels. Excuse me. So like I mentioned, the lots in blue are building development building lots, and the ones in yellow are open space park parcels. And parcel A is the road itself, and it'll be a separate parcel by itself. The other sheets on the maps show you, other than the reconfigured property lines, there are street sections. These sections are in conformance with our sidewalk widths. There are utility plans, there are grading plans, and there are street stormwater plans. So what we are approving here is a tentative map. In order to create legal parcels which can be sold by Lennar to anybody, that will be the second phase. That would be that's what's called a final map. So the final map process is going to take place in 2 phases. The first phase is the final map for lot 1. Lot 1, if you just go back, so lot 1 is this parcel or lot where you have the existing building. The reason this has been separated out from other lots is because it's Lennar's intention to find a buyer for this lot, which will be office space. So it would be the building and the parcel. And that is the reason why that has been separated out. The subsequent phases will allow, the conditions allow for multiple phases after the first phase, and I will go a little bit more into it in a little bit. So in terms of the first phase, the phase 1 final map will, in order for that to be approved, so that that parcel can be sold, the following things will need to occur. There are certain street improvements that will occur on the frontage. There will be the dedication of an easement on the park parcel and the greenway dedication of an easement to the city. They will have to have the design of the park and the greenway approved at the time of the final map, which means that the FTP that the commission has been reviewing will be approved before they can get this final map. Traffic signal at 45th and Hollis Streets will be installed. And there will be an easement on parcel B for temporary construction staging for 5 years. These are just the core of some of the improvements that will occur. If you look at conditions of approval from pages 4 to 10, there are about 6 pages of other improvements that will occur before the final map is approved. So these are mainly things like utilities, water, storm drains, so everything under the ground more or less. And this is the reason why Maurice's involvement is, basically he is the one who has reviewed the plans to ensure that all that he needs to see are there. So now the construction phasing. This is what planners and the city is most interested in. What is going to get built in what phase and in what sequence. So it is anticipated that the construction of Lot 1, which is the existing building, will occur in 2018, and at the same time, in the next month, they anticipate Lot 2 and Lot 4 construction to begin as well. Now, Lot 4 is the site where the parking for other lots is located. So if we go back, I'm going to go back a little bit. So this is Lot 4. This is the lot that will have parking for the existing building, parking for the lot, parking for all other building parcels as well. Some of them, for example, for this parcel, all the parking will be in here, and some of the parking for parcel C and D will also be included. So the idea is that in terms of sequencing, the tenant improvements for this building will occur first. This will be followed by beginning of construction of this parcel and this parcel. After that, it is anticipated that parcel D will be built and then C will be built. So let's go back to this. I know it's a little confusing because the identification of the names of the parcels are different from the PUD, but essentially that's what will occur. So what is the key thing here is that the existing building, it is anticipated, will get online before the parking is built. So we have accounted for that, and I'll come back to that later in terms of during this period of June, July 2019 and May 2020, where will the parking for the office building occur? And I will talk about that in a little bit. And then you see construction of other buildings coming along, and the building for the parking is completed in 2020. And the key thing that we are interested in is the park. For citizens, for the city, when is the park going to get built? So the park is going to be getting built at the later stage, and it will be built before the TCO or the occupancy of the last building is given. So now the issue that has had staff trying to figure out hours and hours to make sure that we get our park is how do we ensure that our park gets delivered, just in case over time, a lot of things can happen. Lennar may not exist, or they may sell it off, or they run out of money, they build one building or two buildings, and we never get the park, or it's a long time period between, say they build one building and then the second building is built before the park is built. So in order to ensure that we will get a park, is that, as I'd noted, the phase 1 final map, and that's the first thing that will occur, the city will get the dedication of the land for the park and the greenway. It will also we will also have an approved design for the public park and the greenway. And this will be secured by performance bonds, whose value will be about 150% of the cost of construction. Now, when will the claim on the bonds be triggered? So we want to make sure that if something goes wrong, then there should be a trigger at which we can claim the bonds and the city will, build the park by itself. So the condition that we have is that if more than 2 years pass from the date of issuance of the TCO of any building or one building on either of the lots under Sherwin-Williams, and the issuance of a building permit for the next building. So the scenario would be, the nightmare scenario would look like this. We have the office building occupied, then we have one building, one residential building occupied, and then they stop. Now, the waiting period will be 2 years. If within 2 years a building permit is not issued for the next building, then that will be a trigger to claim the bonds. And what it means is that when you claim the bonds, it is a notice to Lennar saying that they have, we've given them about 180 days to kind of bid, to give out the bids for the construction of the park. And if they don't perform on that, then that's when we get the actual cash to build, and we get the cash, and then the city builds the park. So we have the triggers for when we will get the land, and then we have triggers for when construction will occur if Lennar disappears from the scene, or if Lennar there is a break in between. So that break would be about 2 to 3 years, after which we would be claiming the bonds. Hopefully that's clear. If not, we can come back to it later on. So that is a good segue to the comments that Park has made. So this is their first comment, and this is a comment that addresses what I just tried to explain. And so that we have created a trigger, and so we have changed or modified a condition of approval, which is in the memo that I have written out. And the underlined language is the new language, and that is what kind of provides a trigger for when the city would claim the bonds and avoid these large periods, in case there are large periods of inactivity on the site, is essentially what that is. The second comment that was made by Park refers to what happens about the parking for the existing building. Now, this has been covered in our condition of approval. And this is on, I believe, on page 10 of conditions of approval. And what Park wants is that Park would like that we require Lennar to build the garage as the first building. It also, so that's their main concern. And Lennar's position is that they need to sell this, need to sell the existing parcel, and then they need a little bit of flexibility in order to do their project. And this condition kind of tells you, it gives them different options for providing parking in the interim, which is about 7 months. And that is either they are able to acquire the Rifkin lot and provide parking there, or they are allowed to use parcel B as a parking lot in the interim, or they may also are allowed to use the city parcel for the parking. Of course, that would require approval by the city council. So those are the options. In order to, I think Park also would like us to require that Lennar use the option of providing off-site parking for Lot 1, or say that require them to either acquire Rifkin lot for parking purposes or some other space which is off-site. And that staff feels is limiting. It's something that Lennar is not completely under Lennar's control. I understand Lennar has been talking to Novartis for leasing of the Rifkin lot, but recognizing that is something which is not completely under their control, there are other options that staff feels that are appropriate to be offered to Lennar at this time. So that is regarding, this is regarding that we, regarding the parking for the existing building. There is a request for an additional crosswalk crossing Sherwin Avenue on the east side of Halleck. We discussed this at length, and staff believes that it would be appropriate to have this condition as the FTP, which creates and designs the park itself, because design of the park and where the crosswalk would be located is better designed at the time the park is designed. So this would become, and this would be noted in the FTP for the park. The park would like to request the commission that to give clarity as to when the TDM of this project will be conducted. The TDM for this project, as required by their PUD, PTP approval, is that they need to provide this before before any FTP for the site is approved. So that would be the timeline before they provide before we bring an approval for any FTP. TDMB will be part of that approval. And my understanding from Kevin is that they would be giving staff a draft of the TDM probably at the end of this month or early next month. This is regarding level 5 traffic calming mitigations. So what Park is saying that they want to give council some flexibility in determining, additional intersections for diversion. This was again discussed extensively within staff, and we concluded that the EIR extensively discussed the traffic calming measures, both level 4 and level 5, and we believe that options have been considered in the EIR, and we have landed where we have landed. The next comment is regarding construction parking. There is a condition, the current condition, which allows them to park on Sherwin Avenue and Horton Street. So that we have modified and excluded that, and this is the modified condition that I have included in the memo to you. Lastly, this is a request for, again, it's a construction-related request in terms of the time where they need to park. Staff believes that this is best addressed at the FTP level. The approval of tentative map is not going to result in any movement of dirt on the site. And so FTP would be the appropriate place to include a condition regarding, timing and any other nuances that we want to include. So that will come to you at the FTP stage. And it will be included in both the FTPs, the building FTP as well as the park FTP. So that concludes the comments made by Park and staff's responses. In terms of approving this subdivision, the commission needs to make a few findings. One is regarding general plan findings and consistency with general plan goals and policies. And this had been, oops, I'm too much in a hurry here, hang on. The project needs to be consistent with a number of general plan goals and policies. Some of them are in front of you in your screen. They've been highlighted and outlined in your resolution as well as staff report. As you can see, it is also consistent with the zoning and the PUD zoning of the plan, which calls for the 2 new streets and the development parcels and open space parcels. And there are a few, precisely 8 tentative map findings, and these also have been outlined in detail in your resolution and staff report. And basically the findings can be made, and a lot of them have been examined in the EIR that was approved last year. And that EIR was approved by the council in September of last year, and since then we do not believe that any substantial change has occurred between September of last year and this year, and therefore the EIR still can be applied to the subdivision here. So that concludes my presentation. If you have questions of me or staff, then we would be happy to answer that.
Thank you, Maru. Linda, would you like to start with any staff questions?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Before I forgot something to mention. So just looking at the memo, if you look at page 1, that's the condition that I presented, and this is regarding the trigger for the bonds. On page 2 of the memo, you will see 2 conditions, which I did not talk about, but these are more just cleaning up and typos. So that's what it does. And the page 3 is regarding eliminating the condition which would allow construction workers to park on Sherwin Avenue and Horton Street. So those are the revised or modified conditions that are in front of you in addition to the conditions of approval.
Great, thank you. Phil?
Maru, thank you for the excellent presentation and all the work that your team has done on this. You had a slide that was construction phasing. Could you return to that? So in this slide, the OC apparently means temporary occupancy, and the OC asterisk means occupancy for parking only, right?
Correct.
So temporary occupancy means that tenants can move in, but there's still some things to do before you get final occupancy certificate. Is that correct?
That is correct. But TCO allows tenants to move in. And sometimes there's a gap between TCO and CO. So we want to make sure that we highlight the TCO rather than the CO.
Okay, so this temporary occupancy, is that the trigger point for the construction, for the time period that after which the park needs to be completed?
Correct. So it will, whenever it's temporary TCO throughout all the conditions.
So the lot 2 is the first, after lot 2 is the first lot that is part of the trigger mechanism, is that correct, for the park?
So the trigger, the conditions allow certain flexibility, right? So they can build lot 2 later on as well. So the trigger is between building any one building and occupying that, and then the next building permit for the next building has not been issued. So if 2 years pass, so for example, according to this, if lot 2 is occupied, right? Well, for the lot 2 to be occupied, we would also have temporary parking. But say lot 2 is occupied, and then there is no building permit issued for the next building, whichever that may be, and 2 years pass, then that will be the trigger.
Okay, well, let's say that lot 2 is occupied and a building permit for the next building is issued. How does that affect the time period for which the park needs to be completed?
Well, then that won't affect the time period. The time period when we will get the park is right here. This is their actual phasing in terms of what they anticipate. The triggers are there to ensure that, say, they just, they build the parking garage, but they decide that they don't want to build lot 5, for example. Or there's a delay in this building, or or lot 3 is never built. Or there's a lot of time that passes. So does that make sense?
It's beginning to, yeah.
Right. But if everything goes as planned by Lennar, then this would be the sequencing of the build-out. And that would be continuous. It's anticipated. As you can see, they are already applying for an FTP for all the buildings. So the intention clearly here is to build it in all one go Obviously, they can't simultaneously build all 4 buildings, so it has to be done in phases. But there is no anticipation of a stopgap, because that's not how they got their PDP. They said they would build it in one go, and that's what their intention is. But here we are trying to ensure that we do get the public park, even if they don't finish the build out, and that's why the trigger is. But if everything goes well, then we should be, recreating in our new park come August 2021.
Okay. So one additional question regarding parking for Building 1 or Lot 1. Could you summarize again for me what the solution is going to be for that?
Okay. So the solution, so as you can see, we expect the parking to be ready for the permanent parking to be ready for Building 1 in May of 2020. Okay, and they will be allowed to occupy the building, in summer of 2019. So we are talking about less than a year, 7 months approximately, where they will be needing some amount of temporary parking. So one option, so at the time of the FTP for that building, all this will be further laid out and clarified in terms of, where are you going to park. But right now, the 3 options that they are given are: 1, they are able to lease the Rifkin lot or some other lot in the walking distance of the site. The Rifkin lot being the most natural one, since it's right adjacent to that. And that would be everybody's preference, including staff's. But if that does not happen, then the other option is that they provide a surface parking lot on their parcel B. So their parcel B is that parcel which is their portion of the public park. They also have the option of using the city parcel for that parking. And if they choose to do that, then they would need approval from the city council.
Okay.
And this has been vetted, whether, is the council even okay with the idea of allowing them to use the city parcel. This was discussed in a the idea was introduced in the closed session, is my understanding.
There was a closed session held on the city's parcel with respect to Lennar.
Right. So that's all she can say. But basically, that was the idea, and we are confident that we can have this condition that they will, subject to, of course, city council, approval. But we did not want to have that option if the city was not interested in doing that.
Okay. My final question is, you made some remarks about queuing for construction vehicles, I think, remote from the site. So where would that be? I mean, is there a known location where they would queue other than at the site itself?
So maybe you're referring to what Park's comment
Yes.
has been?
Yeah.
So my response to that was more, and this is not it. Hang on, let me just get you the right. Where this say? Which one is it?
Here we go.
Yeah. So our response to that is that this is like your standard condition regarding construction, management during construction regarding where they park, the time of construction hours, and other things that we may want to impose on them in order to protect the residents. And we would be looking at this at the time of FTP.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Cardozo, any questions?
No.
Nope. Okay. Commissioner King, I'm going to just jump in out of order real quickly because I want to tag on to what Commissioner Bant was saying. So back on to the doing of the park when the period expires. So if they pull permits for the second building and don't build, permits expire in 2 years, is that correct?
The building permit?
Yeah.
1 year,
1 year, okay.
unless and then you have to renew it.
Right, but in order for them to...
Actually, it's 6 months.
6 months?
Oh,
You have to call for inspection every 6
6
months.
months.
Okay.
Once a building
So
permit's
if they pulled the permits, didn't start working, and didn't come here for an extension on that, they'd have actually 2.5 years before we would actually enact the bond, correct?
Correct.
So altogether, we're looking at 2.5 years before we could actually call the bond in to build the park ourselves. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I think that was a good question, so we know the actual horizon of what is the longest that we would have to wait if we had to do that. So I'll just ask my other 2 questions, and then we'll pass it on down. So if they do fail to build the park, and the city does cash in the bond, will the city have rights to the park design? Will we be able to take that design that they've created, and will we have rights to implement that design? Or would we have to go and design our own park and start from scratch?
No. Sorry. No, we would have a designed park.
Okay, and we would have rights to that design.
Well, we would have,
The bond, so the way it works is with the improvement agreement, we need to have a designed park, and then we have an improvement agreement, and then they've posted the bond so that if they don't build the park, we get to put a claim in on the bond and the park gets built.
Cool. So we don't have to go out and spend the money and develop a new park idea or concept or drawings or anything like that? Okay.
can we just go back to the 2-year increment there?
Yeah.
I'm not sure where the extra 6 months came from.
Because if they pull a permit and they don't do anything for month 2, and they don't do anything for month 3, now we're into 2 years and 2 months and 3 months, and then if their permit expires in 6 months, and they don't build, then their permit expires, correct?
The trigger is from the issuance of permit, not from when the permit expires.
Oh, okay. So it is just 2 years then?
Yeah, it's 2
issuance
years.
of permit, not when the permit expires.
Yeah, they need to pull a permit for a subsequent building within 2 years of getting the TCO for the previous building.
Okay.
And if they don't pull that permit within that 2-year time period, then that triggers us being able to pull the
Okay,
bond.
so if they do pull the permit for the second building, they have to start the park at that point?
No,
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 no.
no. See, if they...
I'm just trying to get the actual, what is the total horizon that we will be without a park before we can actually put money, put a claim in on the bond? Is it strictly 2 years? And then we could start doing the park ourselves?
Right.
You're
Right,
correct.
Okay. And then once they pull the permit for the second building, when do they actually start the park? Does it start in August 2021?
Well, as Miru said, if all goes well and there are no huge time gaps between the buildings, then they are required to have the park done prior to the TCO for the last building.
So 2021.
That's August 2021.
Okay.
This 2-year gap business only comes into play if, in fact, there is a 2-year gap. If there is a delay for some reason in this scenario, then we would be able to get it. Otherwise, normally, it would just be August of 2021.
Okay, good. And then I have one last question for Maru.
Can I just clarify the timing real quick?
Yeah.
The conditions of approval are focused on deliverables. When is the city going to get something? We don't actually care when they start doing work on that deliverable, as long as they can meet the deadline for giving us the deliverable.
Right.
So we don't know when construction of the park will begin. We just know when it will be delivered. And if it isn't delivered by a certain point, then we have to wait a little bit of time and then put the claim in on the bond.
But our security is if the project stalls with the second building, we can then take on
Our
ourselves.
security is between if the project stalls at all,
Right.
whether it's the second building or the third being
building, right.
built, it's from TCO to issuance of the next building permit. And that's for either lot 2, 3, 4, or 5.
So if you look at, so it is possible that they may have built lot 4 and lot 2 and lot 3, and there is a gap.
Correct.
If there's a gap between these two, any gap between two is a gap of 2 years, will trigger the bond. So, trigger the claim on the bond. Trigger. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm pretty clear on it. Okay, and the last question I have is, we have one more study session with Lennar, and then they come back for the FDP approval, correct?
we will see.
Yeah, I think that's been the plan, that we understand. So at the time, when they bring it in for approval, if there are further issues and conditions at that time, can that be addressed during the approval process of the FDP?
Regarding what?
If we wanted to make further conditions as were suggested by Park or anyone else at that time, or issues, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But that,
they
like
should
you
be
were suggesting, the
relevant.
crosswalk be addressed at the FTP,
Absolutely.
but that's not during a study session. We may suggest it at the study session, but we actually put it as a condition in the period when we're approving the FTP.
I would expect to have that as condition. When I draft my conditions, I will take that into account.
Right.
And I need to talk to them in terms of clarifying what exactly do they mean and what they want. But yes.
But we don't make it a condition during the study session. We make it a condition during the final FTP approval.
No.
Okay, I just wanted to
And
get.
just to, for everybody's, so that nobody forgets, I will mention it in my next study session staff report, that, a lot of times in my staff, I kind of see that these are the conditions that will apply. They come from the PDP, and so it's kind of a notice to everybody, the community, myself, and the applicant, that this condition is coming their way.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Commissioner King, for letting me cut in front.
No worries, Mr. Chair. Maru, first of all, thank you for turning around the city's memo so quickly after the Park Committee submitted their letter. I really appreciate your reply to, I believe, at least most of these items. What I want to check on is to make sure I didn't miss anything, to see if there was in fact a city response to each of the Park's letter's claims. So for point 2, is point 2 addressed by the city memo anywhere or intended to be?
I addressed it orally, it's not in the memo.
Okay.
And my response to that is that as a reference to page 10 of your conditions of approval, which I did actually put it in front of you, which outlines different parking strategies for the existing building during the interim.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that. On their third point, is that supposed to be intended to be addressed on page 3 of the city's memo? Point 3 addressed by page 3?
The point 3,
Yes.
is that the question?
Yes, is point 3 intended to be addressed by page 3 of the city's memo?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Let's go in order here. Is there a city response to point 4?
So the city response to that is the crosswalk. So our response is that it is appropriate to include this during the FTP, when we are considering the FTP for the park, because this is going to be right next to the park. So it's kind of important to know the details on the perimeter of the park in order to design the bulb, locate and site design the bulb out.
Gotcha. It is point 5. Does the city have a response to point 5 from the letter?
Well, it asks for the timing of the TDM. I mentioned that the timing of the TDM has been outlined in the PUD conditions, which is that you will have it at the time of your first FTP approval.
Gotcha.
And I also mentioned that in actuality, I'm expecting the TDM plan by the end of this month or early next month. So I expect to present that and include that in the FTP study session.
Gotcha.
If that's my expectation.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you for the thoroughness of the presentation, and I did really appreciate the fact that you're thinking about the parking and thinking about the timing of the park construction. I think I understand everything. We've been through it a couple times, but in terms of the entire horizon, assuming they move forward with everything, it is only 2.5 years. That's pretty fast for this kind of construction. So it's great that you have those, hooks in
Right.
as they proceed. Hopefully it'll all go well.
That is the hope.
So thank you.
All right, any further questions? And does the developer have a presentation to give, or
I don't know.
any statement you want to make, or?
Good evening, Commissioners. Kevin Mall with Lennar. I do not have a formal presentation, and what I really want to do is just thank staff again, Maru, Charlie, Andrea, and Maurice, especially Maurice. going through this jigsaw puzzle with us to get to this stage. We've probably had, I don't know, 10 hours worth of meetings, and Maru just tried to summarize that to you in a matter of a half hour tonight. And so really the only thing I just wanted to say was that this is really all set up for a kind of worst case scenario. And really what Maru was talking about earlier is like, it's our intent, like as long as the market holds up, we're going to go, our intent is to build all of this at once, and then the park will be wrapped into that. This is more just contingency planning. If for whatever reason there's a change in the market, the economy turns south, and we can we have to go slower. That's what this whole discussion is around. Ultimately, if everything holds up like it is today, generally speaking, our goal is to break ground next fall with the whole kit and caboodle. And so it's just going to be a very much more smoother build out than kind of what this document has outlined. And so really that's, I'm here happy to answer questions, but really it's just to convey that message. And again, thanks staff, because this is a jigsaw puzzle of a document to put together.
Are there any questions for Evan? I just have a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
And one is, I don't know even if you can answer it or not, but the Rifkin lot is something I saw immediately as a place that we could really,
sure,
because they don't use it. It's like totally unoccupied. Yeah. And so I don't know if it's appropriate for you to answer now, if how the negotiation is going. Does it seem to be positive?
To talk about that. So we've actually, and we've relayed this to staff, is so we've reached out to the Novartis real estate group. They said they're willing to engage with us. They said, hey, like you said, there's not being used right now. But the only condition that they said was like, hey, you know, since we're not going to need it until, call it, what is that, the summer of 2019, they're saying, hey, come back and talk to us when we get closer to it, because we can't make that commitment today, simply because things could change over the next, 2 years.
Okay.
Right? But they said they're more than happy to talk with us about that. So that's what we're saying. It's like, I think it's in all of our best interest that we can get to that point and just lease that parking lot for that temporary parking, and it just makes it so much easier for everybody. But like Maru was saying, we just have to put these safeguards in place just in case that doesn't happen. Yeah. So we have contingency plan A, contingency plan B, contingency plan C to make sure that it's all being addressed down the road.
Thank you. And I'm glad to hear that they're open to the idea and want to come back.
Yeah, they definitely are.
And then the performance bond issue for the park, that's pretty standard procedure for you guys, and you understand that.
Anytime we have any kind of public improvement like that, whether it's just doing sidewalks or curb and gutters. I mean, Maurice, we go through this all the time on any jurisdiction. You always have to post a performance and labor bond, just in case.
But this is kind of above and beyond the normal. I mean,
it's a little bit. It's a beefier bond for sure, because it builds out a whole new park.
Right.
But ultimately, the mechanics are the same. We have to do it all the time for any kind of public improvements.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I have. Okay. So at this time, if there are no more questions for the developer or staff, I'll open this up to. But did you want to we want to speak on?
See if anybody else had any other questions for me.
I think we're good. Yeah. So at this time, we'll open up the meeting to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please approach, give us your name, and we will give you 3 minutes to give us your feelings and thoughts. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Would you like to start us off? Any comments or?
I think the comments are that it looks like a good plan, and I'm sort of impressed with moving forward, and the level of detail that's worked out. So.
Again, I'd like to commend the work of the city as well as the developers in working together on this, but also especially want to thank just everybody involved, including the residents and the members of the park committee, coming together, staying vigilant, and staying on top of things. Really happy how all the stakeholders involved are working together on this. Very proud of how everything is going.
I think compromises that have been made on this by the residents, developer, and the way the staff has brought up the latest comments and modified it further is fantastic. And I think we should go ahead.
Yeah, I want to commend Park for its consistent vigilance and its astuteness in the bringing up the points that it did, and also commend the city staff and the applicant for addressing the issues in a creative way.
I'll echo everything my fellow commissioners just said, and Maru, thank you so much for explaining all this complicated information so clearly, and I really appreciate your staff reports because they're very easy to read, and I know that this is very complicated stuff, so I appreciate that a lot. And also thank you to Park for combing through these dense conditions of approval with such a fine-tooth comb, and I appreciate the comments that you all submitted to the city, and for Maru incorporating them in such a short time span into the memo. And Maurice, thank you also for your hard work on this. I'm sure it took a lot to, get these few pages in front of us. So thank you all to staff, and yeah, I look forward to moving forward with the project.
Thank you, and well, it's very unanimous that everyone is happy. Staff, you did a fabulous job, and really thank you for addressing the park concerns so quickly and getting us answers to all those questions. That really made everything a lot easier tonight. And this is just a perfect example of the city, the developer, and the community working together, hammering out a deal that everyone is comfortable with, making sure that everyone's vested concerns are considered, and to me, so far, this has been a pretty good win-win, and I just appreciate everybody's efforts, and it's been really good. So at this time, and Maurice, thank you, it's probably your last big project for us. Very good job. We really appreciate it. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion on the item.
I move we approve with modifications.
With the new conditions?
Yeah.
I second the motion.
Alrighty. Can we have a vote, please?
Okay, Commissioner Banta?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrera?
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson is recused. Commissioner Kang?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Cardoza?
Aye.
And Chair Keller.
Aye.
6 ayes, the application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Very good. Thank you all. So item B has been continued to another future agenda, so we will move on to item C for the new season's market sign, and I will step down for the time being. You're going to do it from here, or do I need to clean up this mess? Okay, you with the hammer?
Yeah.
Hi again and bye again.
Passing in the night.
Is staff ready to make the presentation?
Yeah, I think
Staff is ready now.
I have to catch my breath. Good evening, Commissioners. Oh, he's recused. Okay. So I'll be presenting on New Seasons Market tonight. So I think we're pretty familiar with the public market area. And this is the current configuration, but as we know, the streets are moving, or streets singular. So here's Shellmount, and here is the grocery store, highlighted there. And the signs that are proposed are on the east and south sides of the building. Still catching my breath. So in 2008, the Marketplace PUD was approved. In 2015, Parcel C, the grocery store, was approved. And in April of this year, the New Seasons Market sign application was submitted. So here's a site map for that. The building also has residential, but that is on the other sides, and none of the signs are facing the residential portions of this building. And you can see the sign areas here on the south and east. Just remembered I also have a materials board for you.
Thank you.
So 7 signs are proposed. 6 of them include the same green and black logo that all say New Seasons Market. 3 of them are illuminated and facelit, and 3 of them are non-illuminated. And then there's 1 sign with illuminated white channel letters that says the friendliest store in town.
And here's the summary of those signs. Altogether, the square footage for the signs is just under 208 square feet. And the maximum sign area is 1 square foot of sign area per 1 linear foot of building frontage. And the linear building frontage is about 279, 280 feet, so this is well under that. So here's the east elevation along Shellmound, and there's a projecting sign and the wrap of the friendliest store in town and hanging sign. And this is on the corner, so those same 3 signs are there. And then wrap around the 62nd Street side of the facade, there's the New Seasons Market signs under canopies and over the entrance doors. So sign A is the friendliest store in town, the illuminated channel letters that's on the corner wrapping 62nd and Shellmound. And I just highlighted it here so you can see it a little bit better in these renderings. And sign B, there's 3 of these signs, and they are perpendicular from the building, and these are the ones that are not illuminated. So you see them in the daytime, but not so much in the nighttime. These are more pedestrian-oriented signs. And here's another a view of that closer in, as if you were walking west on 62nd Street. And there I am circling the sign again, right above this rendering of a gentleman there. So sign C is a projecting sign. This is the one on the corner I spoke of. This is the largest sign. It is illuminated. And here's a same view we just looked at a moment ago, but now this time highlighting that vertical sign. And here's a view of it as if you were on 62nd looking east towards Shellmound. Highlighting that sign there. And then here we are on Shellmound facing south. And just highlighting the sign there for your reference. And sign D is over the main entrance of the doors that's facing out towards 62nd Street. So this view is as if you were in the alleyway behind the alleyway that's behind the tall office building there. And then here's sign E, which is the same style of sign, but slightly smaller, and this is over the main entrance underneath the canopy where it has the friendliest store in town written. And here's another view of that, a little closer in. So major design review findings for the signs are that the proposed signs are appropriately sized and necessary for their location, and that they meet the planning regulations and design principles. The proposed signs keep the visual character of the area, and the signs are readable from appropriate vantage points and distances, and and that the signs relate well to the buildings and architectural features. The general design review findings, they do meet the general plan and urban design goals of the city and the urban design guidelines, and the project is a high design quality and compatible with the surrounding area and will not adversely affect it. So the applicant is here if you have any questions for the applicant, and I'm also available for any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Is the tall blade sign and the friendliest store in town sign, are they visible from the residential building that is south on Shellmound, on parcel A, that has some residences above the first floor?
It's on the other side of parcel B. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the very beginning of the presentation. So the signs that are proposed are right here, the 2 that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And parcel A is a substantial difference, I believe over 300 feet. Mm-hmm. Does that sound about?
Sure.
Right? It's a substantial distance. It is probably visible to some of the residents at this corner, but the distance is substantial, and because they're slightly angled, it's not directly head-on facing them. If we go back and look at those renderings again, you can see that here we go, if it's illuminated at night, the vertical sign is slightly angled, so it's not directly facing residential units down the block. And same for this one as it wraps. It's also much lower to the ground. So it's certainly not intended to be seen by those people.
Okay.
I notice you have no parking signs. Is that something that'll come later?
Oh, the parking signs were actually included under the signs you approved last time for the public market directional. So those included signs for parking that will be used by people going to the store.
Okay, it's on the back side of this building.
Yeah, so they do have some signs for the back side of this building, yes.
Okay. No further comments? Would the applicant like to speak?
I'm Mike McClure with That Art Sign Company, and really I really can't add much more to the great job that Navarro already did on the staff report, but I am available for any questions. And addressing one of the issues as far as visibility and lighting, all these signs will have dimmers on them so that the lighting level can be set lower if need be. So.
I do just have one question. As a sign designer, can you say something about sort of the perceived intensity of the green lights as compared to different colors? I mean,
Well, anytime you use a background color other than white, it's going to be significantly dimmer than most colors. Well, the challenge we run into is a lot of times people want to use certain colors that are almost not visible, like blue, for example. I think this green is going to be a very subtle lighting, but it's probably going to be a very appealing lighting, particularly for a grocery store.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Any member of the public like to speak on this?
So you're opening the public hearing?
Yeah. Seeing no interest, we'll close the public hearing. Start.
And I just wanted to note that I did ask about LED lighting in the previous signs that we reviewed, and it's very clear here that you're going that direction, so I just wanted to note that I appreciated that. Right, okay. Otherwise, it looks like a good package. I don't have further comments.
Looks great.
I think they look attractive, and I don't think they're too obtrusive.
Looks like a good solution to me. I support it.
Same here.
Would anyone like to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution by Navarre.
I'll second it.
Okay, ready?
Call the vote.
Commissioner Banta?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrera?
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Kang?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Cardoza?
Aye.
And Chair Keller is recused, so that is 6 ayes. The application is approved. This decision is appealable to the City Council within 15 days.
Good job, Buzz.
Tough job.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cardoza. Does anyone wish to take a break?
I would like to.
Yeah, okay, why don't we go ahead and take a 5-minute?
Too fast for me.
Alrighty, now we're on to the study session for the redevelopment of properties at 3600, 3610, and 3620 San Pablo Avenue. Welcome back, Maru.
Thank you. So this is a study session on a project that is city initiated. And the properties we are talking about, oops, this is not it. Let me just hang on. Let's get rid of.
Looks like it.
Okay. And the properties we are talking about is in the very south of our town, at the border of Oakland and at the border of Oakland along San Pablo Avenue. So what we are talking about are 3 parcels. They are contiguous and under the same ownership, and they are about 0.39 acres. So a bit of background is necessary on this project, and to give you an idea of what the council, where the council is coming from. In March of this year, the council reaffirmed one of its objectives to create housing for the homeless by requesting staff to hold a study session on the financial feasibility analysis for this site. The objective of this was to find ways to add affordable housing units and to include a space for ECAP so that it can continue to provide food and other community services at this location. On May 2nd, the council reviewed these options. They reviewed 5 development scenarios. 2 of them included scenarios for housing the homeless, or what we refer to as supportive housing, and 3 scenarios were for housing low-income residents. These scenarios also included different financing schemes that the council looked at. So as the financial considerations are not under the jurisdiction of this commission, the scenarios that involve financial parameters have been excluded. So what you're looking at are basically 3 development scenarios. And the first one is for supportive housing. Like I mentioned, that the council is looking to find ways to house the formerly homeless. And in this scenario, the ground floor would include an expanded space for ECAP. So currently they have about 2,000 square feet. So that would increase to a little over 5,000 square feet. And the ground floor would also include garage for 16 parking spaces. On the 2nd and 3rd floors, there would be 39 units. The average size of these units are a little under 500 square feet. And the ground floor would also include community services, such as a health clinic, possibly counseling services, employment, job training, or similar such services. Or the space could be used for additional ECAP space as well. So looking at the floor plans, pardon me, they're not very clear when they're on the screen there, but this is the ground floor. And they would have obviously a lobby and an office. Then this would be community services that I mentioned, space for that. And this is the ECAP space, so that's about 5,000 square feet. And at the back, you have parking. On the 2nd and 3rd floors, you have units, and they total 39. The second scenario is housing to serve low-income families, so it would be 100% affordable. The ground floor would include an expanded space for ECAP, although that space is a little less than scenario 1, but it's still a little over 3,500 square feet. And there would be garage space for 26 spaces. There would be a total of 35 units on the 2nd and the 3rd floors, with an average size of a little under 900 square feet. And because of the larger garage, there will be no room for other community services on the ground floor. Scenario 3 is pretty much similar, except that this would provide housing for mixed income levels. Again, the ground floor would be the same. The 35 units, the total unit count does not change, or neither does the size. But what does change in this scenario is that the 17 would be affordable units and 18 would be market rate units. And again, because of the larger garage, there won't be any room for community services. So this is the floor plan for scenario 2 and 3. So the ground floor is this. You have the parking at the back, you have a lobby, and you have space for ECAP. There are possibly 3 floors, and each all of them total 39. So this sort of gives you, in a nutshell, the different parameters in terms of which scenario is going to support which population, the units, the average unit size, the space for ECAP, and parking spaces. So in terms of how they conform with our policies, like I mentioned, it is in the mixed-use residential south, MURS, where multi-unit residential which is scenario 2 and 3, allowed by right. Supportive housing, depending on exactly what classification, they may either be allowed by right or with a CUP. In terms of density, what's allowed is 50 by right, 100 units per acre with a bonus. So that translates on this site as to 20 units by right and 39 units with a bonus. In scenario 1, which has 39 units, it will need 100 bonus points. 2 and 3, actually, it should be 2 and 3. Both will require 79 bonus points for the density. FAR 1.5 by right, 3 with a bonus. Scenario 1 proposes 1.4, and that's allowed by right. 2 and 3 is a little bit more, and they would need 33 bonus points. Height is 40 by right, 75 with a bonus. And the proposal is 3 stories for scenario 1, 3 to 4 stories for scenario 2 and 3. And depending on the height of each floors, it may require bonus points, especially the 4 stories. Parking, the scenarios, different scenarios have a little slightly different parking spaces. They meet the required parking spaces except for scenario 1, where they are 1 short. So they would need a use permit to allow them to go under the minimum required. So the issues that, this is very preliminary. It's basically the idea of what the commission would like to see on the site. It's not so much the various details. As you can see, there's not really too much of an elevation either. But what we want to see and get input from you is, in terms of the 3 scenarios that have been presented, what would be the commission's preference on the site? And of course, any other comments or considerations that you may have for staff. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Maru. Any questions?
I have a question. So these parcels are up for sale. Does it mean that the city is considering buying them to redevelop them?
That is what this council is looking into, okay. And therefore they had the study session to look at the financial feasibility, and of course they had the same scenarios. The development scenarios in terms of uses were exactly the same. So what I haven't included and what they looked at is basically the financing mechanisms, okay. Which yeah.
And Maru, did you have to mention that all 3 parcels are owned by 1 person?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're also, sometimes we in staff, we call them the Kareem properties.
So, Maru, the property is currently privately owned, and we're being asked to discuss or provide input on what we think the use of the property might be, and it's
the appropriate use on this site.
Use on this
yeah.
site. And although our commission is not supposed to be considering financial issues, are the decisions we're making today going to impact the value of the property or the input we give?
No. You mean what the direction you give tonight?
There's 3 scenarios we're asked to give input
Right.
on, which I presume means at the end, we prefer 1, 2, or 3. Is there a different impact to the value of the property for scenario 1, 2, and 3 to the current owners?
No.
Okay.
So, in terms of property appraisal, it will be what this site is zoned for and what it allows. Your preference today, your articulation of a certain preference will not, impact because we're not sure whether that's actually is going to come to be. So, if that
Okay.
helps.
Zoning it.
So I have a couple of other questions as well. So in scenario 1, you had a space allocated for community services. What sort of community services would those be?
So, the idea is it would be, the community services, so one thing to remember, the ECAP will stay and will be expanded. The space for ECAP will remain and in an expanded form in all 3 scenarios. Then in scenario 1, which is for homing, the supportive housing, which is to home the homeless, is the services would be related to that. If it is not homeless, it's some other kind of supportive housing, then we anticipate the services to tailor to the needs of the population that will ultimately occupy the building.
Okay.
The other 2 scenarios, which are basically housing, straight up housing, one is 100% affordable, other one is mixed. That in these scenarios, there isn't any space left over for, be it even a community room. So I just wanted to highlight that because of the parking.
So scenario 1 is really dedicated to serving the homeless population, is that correct?
That is correct. That is the scenario.
Scenario 2 and 3 are not focused on that, is that correct?
Correct. It'll be just your scenario 2 will be your 100% affordable housing, and scenario 3 will be mixed. Some will be affordable units, and some will be market rate units.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No question?
I don't have any questions.
So Maru, in scenario 2, well, first of all, let me just start with a clarifying question. For scenario number 2, providing low-income family housing, does that mean all the housing units would be for low-income?
My understanding is they'll be all affordable units. Whether is it, that's what you mean, right? Which affordable level? Is that your question?
I'm just looking at the language of the staff report. On page 3 it says low-income family housing. So, right. Are we using those terms interchangeably?
In this scenario here, yes.
Okay.
So yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. Can you specify what that would be? Family size and income levels is?
There is no proposal in terms of the income levels within the affordable menu. But if you want the size of the units, they are about a little under 900 square feet.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't asking about the size of the units. Just more like, does the city have any kind of determination in terms of income qualification based on the size of the family that would live inside one unit or another?
I don't believe we do that.
Yes, we have. Well, you have standards for low, very low, and moderate, and it's based on family size. So, in other words, a family of 3 can have more income than a family of 2 in order to qualify into an affordable unit.
Okay. So then I would ask the city to specify, does it really mean affordable or does it mean low income? Because that's the language on page 3 of the staff report is using low income. So I would like some, more clarification on the next iteration of this about where the staff is intending. Is it intending to be affordable or is it intending to be some specification according to statute about what is low income?
That would be below median income for the area.
But honestly, I think that's farther in the weeds. Right now, we're at a higher level. I don't think City Council has looked into the qualifying components. They're just saying, do we want this all to be for lower income affordable housing, or do we want a mix of market rate and?
The reason why I want to specify that is because depending on what the type of families that's going to be living in those units, I'm trying to determine whether it should be something offered as a mix of scenario one, because scenario one offers a lot of social services, but depending on what kind of families are living in the units in scenario two, or there's some kind of city services that should be offered in a scenario two, because they're on the kind of the gray area or borderline of a scenario one population.
I just don't think the square footage is there to offer anything else other than ECAP. But because of the parking demands, it takes up that space on the affordable or the.
Correct. So in both scenario 2 and 3, there's no space left for providing a community room for the residents or any such services.
I was having the same thought, because normally when we build affordable housing, we have a place for kids to come do their homework or for people to find jobs and stuff like that. Those are the things that we usually put in affordable housing units. But here, there's just no square footage for that.
And, the commission has the right to give input regarding that. If they want, affordable housing, then you can say with the caveat that it won't work if there are no other services.
Or could we eliminate some parking to allow for the square footage of a room such as that with a conditional use permit? So maybe we want that more than parking, and we say, hey, take out these stalls and put in a...
So I think, Maru, you've verbalized the questions that I had and the issues that I'm kind of exploring right now. Is scenario even possible, given the populations that we're targeting to move in a scenario 2 scenario?
I can provide a little more detail. I'm looking at the City Council staff report. We didn't get into this information in your staff report because we were focusing on the land use issues and the zoning issues. But there were actually, as Miru said, there were 5 scenarios that were presented to the City Council. And the family housing had 3 scenarios. One was the mixed income, the other was the 100% affordable. So for the 100% affordable, there were 2 scenarios. In one of them, there were 4 units at 30% AMI. AMI is area median income. 9 at 40% AMI, 14 at 50% AMI, and 7 at 60% AMI, plus 1 manager unit, totals 35. And in the other one, there were 17 at 50% AMI and 17 at 60% AMI and 1 manager unit. And then the mixed income project had 9 at 50% AMI, 8 at 60% AMI, 17 market rate, and 1 manager unit.
Does that give you more info?
Yeah.
Any other question?
Not for now.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson?
I have two questions. One was that the memo was really informative and useful, but the thing that seemed to be missing was the question about what's Emeryville's greatest need. And so I think that's where I was sort of left saying, is there a need for the homeless population? Does that outweigh the need for affordable units? Do we have any information on that would sway us one way or the other? And I didn't find that in the staff report.
Correct, it's not in the staff report, but offhand, I think I can say this, that the homelessness issue in our city, very similar to our neighboring cities, has been increasing. It's pretty evident, actually. And we, as far as I know, we do not have any supportive housing for the homeless in our town. And at least one council member is particularly interested in addressing this shortfall. So I believe that's where it's coming from. It's also, like the staff report mentions, among the council objectives and priorities as well.
Okay.
We also do have some affordable family housing. There's the EAH project at 3706 San Pablo that will have 87 units, and then there's the Ambassador nearby that does have, I think, about 79 units. So we do have that already. As Mira said, we do not have any housing for the formerly homeless.
And I think it's recognized that in our regulations, we have tried to address the shortage of affordable units through the bonus system. And we, so attempts are being made at that end as well. So I think.
Okay.
I would say, though, that in both categories, we don't have nearly enough.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I also had a question about the terminology. I know that family is being used, but I don't really have enough detail in the plans to know that this is family. Is it 2 and 3 bedrooms, or are you honestly saying it is family and it would be designed to the family standards?
At this point, this is all the information. But the intention is to provide provide housing for low-income families.
Well, let me just say, under the zoning, under the planning regulations, it's more than 10 units. Multifamily residential, more than 10 units, it would be subject to the family-friendly design guidelines.
Okay.
And the plans that were given show 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. I don't know the count or anything, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess there was a 3-bedroom as well.
Yeah. And
To say the information is very sketchy at this point. This is simply literally a sketch plan that was developed to try to flesh out this project.
Emery, I just have one question. If you could just show any of the floor plans, to me, the units look like the corridors are going to be fairly well daylighted, but I just wanted to kind of confirm that on the plans that I'm seeing correctly, because I like that idea. It's because they're not double-loaded corridors except in one part. Well, they're kind of, any of the floor plans, if you could bring them up.
Yeah,
You could show them on the screen, any of the floor plans. Because I don't visualize the adjacent building, so I don't know really what. So on the east end, it shows both corridors coming to an end at the east end. And do those abut a building, or would those be glazed? And then in the areas where there are the terrace in the center, could that also be glazed? It looks like opportunities for daylighting the corridors. And with your familiarity to the project, is there an abutting building that would not provide us to put windows at the end of those eastern corridors?
I wouldn't know.
Actually, if you look,
There isn't.
if you look at the plans, if you look at the plans that are in your packet, there's a little picture down here in the corner.
Yeah, it kind of looked like there was something in the way.
Well, not on 37th Street. There's a house there.
Right, but there's a building, and I couldn't tell if that was existing or part of the project.
Sure, that's the Bay Bridge Apartments that were developed by RCD. It's for housing for people with AIDS.
Oh, okay.
That was a city project. I believe it's just one story, but...
Yeah, I kind of thought so too. I didn't go look, and I was just hoping maybe, but it's not germane actually to this. Okay, so if there are no more questions of staff.
Steve, I have one more
Sure.
question. Maru, are you aware of any other projects in our neighboring cities or in the Bay Area that are exclusively dedicated to homeless housing?
Personally, I'm not aware, especially in the vicinity of this area. But generally in the Bay Area, there are certain. I don't have a project in mind. If that's what you are looking for, no, I don't have.
Does San Francisco have anything like this? I
think they have some.
Yeah,
I thought they might have.
Yeah. I thought Oakland also has.
Delancey Street is similar, although that's for people in rehab. It's not for formerly homeless.
All those issues will come to fruition if this goes forward. I'll be very honest. It's not, this is, like I said, it's more very, very preliminary. Is there support for housing for the homeless, or does the commission feel that is the affordable units that we need to continue working on? I think that is the fundamental issue in front of you, rather than, So if this comes back, then, and especially if it is for supportive housing, which we haven't done as a commission or as a staff member, then it would be in my interest to do some more investigating and exploring in terms of what the issues are and what the do's and don'ts are for the design of a supportive housing project.
And I'm sure you will. All right, thank you. So at this time, we'll open the item to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward. Give us your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
After you speak, if you would please sign in on the sign-in sheet that's to the right.
Right here on the other table?
But after you're done speaking.
Afterwards.
After you're done speaking. After you're done.
No, sir. So you can go ahead and speak here, and then sign in on the clipboard when you're done. Yeah.
apologize.
No
I've
problem.
never done this before. My name is Bobby Miller, and I'm here on behalf of ECAP. I'm here to advocate for the approval of scenario number 1, the supportive housing. ECAP is the place in Emeryville of last resort, the place to go where there's no other place to get help. We operate a food pantry, distributing fruits, vegetables, meats, and dry goods, all healthy foods. Additionally, we provide informal guidance counseling to individuals, families, and children. We collect and distribute household items and make referrals to other social services. I'm advocating scenario 1 because ECAP needs a lot more space to effectively provide the level of service needed. Most of our work has to be done outside in the courtyard and in the parking lot because the warehouse at 3610 San Pablo is just too small. But because we care so much, we make it work. We need more room to move the entire operation indoors off the street. This past rain season was so difficult, our volunteers threatened to quit because of the rain. But I was able to persuade them to help me distribute the food because clients needed it so bad they were standing in the rain waiting. Thanks to Alameda County Food Bank and the many stores donating food, we distribute anywhere from 25 to 30 tons of food weekly, or 100 to 120 tons monthly. Individuals have access to 25 or 30 pounds of food each time they come, so the documented numbers is only a part of the total as clients give to extended family and friends and what have you. In that process, though, we're open 6 days a week, and we're distributing food to about 300 individuals representing families, and in this population, family size is approximately 3. So in effect, we're handing out food for at least a minimum of 900 people daily. Beyond just handing out food, though, there's a need for a commercial kitchen to prepare cooked food for homeless who have no way to prepare meals. Scenario 1 is recommended because it's the one scenario that most closely provides the space needed for ECAP's food pantry. Thank you and the city for your continued support.
Sir, before you leave, could you say what ECAP stands for?
Emeryville Citizens Assistance Program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Adlai Kareem. I'm the owner of the properties in question. And I think Bobby Miller has a good point that the needs of the ECAP and their providing food is a good point, but I was hoping that he would call attention to the way the food trucks come in and how that could be incorporated into the design. And I really think that you're not taking full advantage of the space here. Well, I saw a thing on there that said 75 foot plus, and you know, you express concerns about parking 26 spaces or something like that. But if you put underground parking and built a bigger structure and took advantage of the height limitations, you could get parking. You could even charge for parking for city car share, some of these car sharing pools they have, or even have, you know, parking for the other businesses in the area, you know, city parking, you know, charge for that. Also, the plan was, I mean, the zoning's for 39 plus units. Because it's in a transit hub, developers have told me that there's, what do they call that, entitlements for more than that, up to close, people mentioned almost 60 units there. And traditionally the zoning is for, they want to preserve the retail character of the San Pablo frontage at least. So I was thinking that maybe you should focus on ECAP being on 37th Street and preserve some of the storefronts on San Pablo for, retail businesses, or, I had a whole list of ideas for community options that benefit the whole community and not just the low-income ones. A library, for example. The city of Emeryville doesn't have a library. I asked Oakland Library what happened. They said there was some plan for it, but they're piggybacking on Oakland. So a library would benefit everybody in the city. Some of the other ideas. They talked about vocational training centers and, counseling services, job training and such. You could have workshops, and they could, you could get funding from other sources to support those. Also, there's a demand for artisan center or studios. I know other cities like Walnut Creek has a extensive ceramic studio, that benefits the city. My mom was really involved in that. And, with that fire they had in the warehouse in Oakland, there's a demand for artist studios. Could you
wrap up your thoughts for us? That's your 3 minutes. Your 3 minutes are up, so could you kind of encapsulate and close it up?
Well, okay, so you guys are the planners. I don't think the planning of this has been thought out thoroughly to take full advantage of this property. And although I'm not supposed to talk about the valuation or the financial aspects, but because it was presented to the appraiser as a low-income project only, the appraisal came in really low, and it might jeopardize the city even getting involved if they don't understand that thing. And I haven't even seen the appraisal, and I thought that it was, available to the public.
Alrighty, thank you very much.
Okay.
Sign in.
Would you sign in the clipboard on the corner there so we get your name right for the minutes? Thank you. Alrighty, anyone else? Seeing no one else, we will close the public comment and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Thompson, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I think it's good to be able to see some of the details. I'm happy to begin to understand, what the greatest need might be. I do find this is a fit test in my mind. It's good to see what fits on the site. It's good to get a sense of it. But, I understand that we're in the study mode and that it isn't fully developed as a project. So I think it's appropriate for where it is, and look forward to keeping.
Is there a preference you have towards affordable, mixed, supportive?
Yeah, I guess the only.
I think that's what they're really looking for from us.
Yeah, I think the only question, and this was related to the greatest need question, was that there's a lot of literature around the benefits of mixed income. If you talk if you talk to housing advocates, though, the flip side is that you don't get a lot of unit creation, and so those are the things that you're always balancing. And so I think that's why I asked about greatest need, because if you have a unique situation where you don't have supportive housing and you're creating units, that's great. You're creating units, and so I'd support it from a creating units perspective. From the health of the community and sort of thinking about the broader spectrum of mixing income levels, that's generally accepted as a good practice. And so the ability to do that here, it is pretty small though. So in terms of the mixing, it's small within a larger community, so it may not be as important in this location. So I think I'm weighing those things. So I don't think any of them are off the table, really.
Okay, great.
Don't have any strong opinions yet on which scenario might be the appropriate scenario to go with, because I think it's way too early. But what I'd like to see in the next iteration in terms of presentation to us is in scenario 2. It seems like in scenario 2, I think we need to further define and clarify what kind of high needs residents we're intending to be there, whether it be low income or affordable housing whatever it is, I think we just need further clarification, and whatever that definition is, I would love some exploration as to what kind of services might be needed or appropriate, because it seems like we're trying to aim for some kind of high needs families, but we don't know what yet. So some kind of exploration of what services, support services might be necessary or needed given whatever population we're targeting for scenario 2. That's it.
I think that I agree with Commissioner Thompson's talk about the benefits of mixed use, but the need to create units. I think that unfortunately, where we are today, the needs for everything is just so extreme. Whenever we have affordable housing units, the lottery goes out, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of applicants for every single unit that goes out as an affordable unit. Mm-hmm. So clearly, there's a need for that. But I think that at this location, I think this location would be a really good location for supportive housing, given that ECAP is there, given that it's adjacent to a freeway and a freeway exit with a lot of idling traffic. That's not an ideal situation for raising kids around a lot of auto exhaust and things like that. I think that expanding ECAP so it can continue to provide services is really valuable. I drive by there on my way to work and see the people lined up every morning waiting for a long time just to get something. I think that the location of ECAP on the corner where it is now has been useful, because during that rainy season, people could actually wait under the freeway when they couldn't get into the building yet, or into the lot. So I would support, in addition, the fact that we don't have supportive housing in our community, and we see a really growing need for it. I would support the first scenario, I think.
Very good, thank you.
I agree with Gail. I also support the first scenario. We don't have any facility of this sort in town. We also have ECAP, which is almost an integral part of this kind of housing. And I think this is the way we should go. While we don't have enough affordable housing, we do have a lot of affordable housing in almost all new developments here. And so this is a special needs situation, and I think we should do scenario 1.
Well, Eldridge Cleaver famously said, either you are part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And I think the scenario 1 definitely falls into the category of being part of the solution. I'm pretty active in the Bay Area, and I'm not aware of any projects that are exclusively dedicated to serving the homeless population. And indeed, there is tremendous demand for housing of all types, for low income, very low, moderate, etc. I think the demand for housing for the homeless is so evident, and we can see it every day, and I think the supply is practically non-existent. So for the city of Emeryville to actually take the step of bringing to life a project like Scenario 1 is suggesting would be, I think, a tremendous reflection of the city's progressiveness and its initiative in the social sector. I think the property owner's comments, I thought, were very cogent. I think it would be interesting to see if the design for the supportive housing could be evolved to increase its density, that if the parking could be treated in a way that's taken as a kind of a total transit proposition, that where there are viable alternatives to cars, etc. And I think the provision of community services along with ECAP on the ground floor really makes tremendous sense. So I strongly support Scenario 1.
I very much agree with what Commissioner Donaldson said. And I think at this point, I am supporting both Scenario 1 and Scenario 2, and not choosing between either one without more data and information. But I understand this is just a preliminary phase, so I would like to explore the need for either scenario one or scenario two moving forward.
Very good, thank you. My answer is going to be a little bit long-winded, but just to start off the top, we need all. I think everyone says we need it all, and we just don't have enough of any. But we have made gains in creating low-income housing, particular to projects, and integrating them into our new projects. So we are making gains into that. Supportive housing, we have none, and none of us here can put our finger on any in the East Bay. And this to me, in Berkeley.
I just saw it going up on Shattuck Avenue.
Okay, so it's not open yet, so we don't have one. Okay. So with that said, I really think that for me, it's not a question. And the reason I support this is when I lived in the Central Coast in Carmel and worked for the city, I found this group called the Homeless Garden Project. They've been in business or in service now for 25 years, and they run on the theory is if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him to fish, you feed him for life. This group has a 3-year apprentice program. They're very successful. The recidivity rate is very low. And I think this type of thing is that. I mean, ECAP does a great job feeding people for the day, and it fills that desperate need, but we need to step up our game. We need to get people out of the tents. We need to get them out from under the freeway. And granted, 39 units isn't going to help the whole population, but it's going to start the ball rolling. And I think having the supportive services with that, a health center, an area where someone could actually work on a job resume, a place where they can clean up for a job interview. There's just so much that we can put in this place to support the people who are homeless. And the news tonight said homelessness is even going higher. And to me, it's you drive behind Home Depot and you see those tents, or you're right along Wood Street, and it's just it makes your heart just cry to see these people, whether they're families or single people. And we all know homelessness has many different causes, whether it's drug addiction, mental health, or just there's several people who are just one paycheck away from being homeless. So although I do agree that the need for all this housing is definitely out there, I think we have a greater need, and we have a really good opportunity because ECAP exists. ECAP is successful, and we can help them be more successful by providing this space. And then we can bring in more community services to really help those people who don't want to be homeless to get off the street and to really put their life back on track. And I think, living in a tent, you're not going to get that opportunity. So for me, scenario one is without a doubt the one we should go with, and I hope we get that support. Do we need a motion or anything, or is it just okay?
No, we just wanted to hear your comments.
Very good. Anyone want to add anything? Are we good?
So what I'm hearing is a majority of the commission, barely, would support the supportive housing, and the other 3 commissioners are undecided at this point.
Well, they want more information, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Right. I would just like to make one comment on the comments of the property owner concerning the density. The analysis that Miru provided to you shows under the current zoning what the maximum residential density is, base and bonus, as well as the FAR and the height limit, and the maximum density with a bonus is 39 units. It's the way it's zoned right now.
Very good. Thanks for that additional information. At this time, do we have any commissioner comments? Wow, we're adjourned.
They said it'd be an hour.